All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's the Brandon Cruz Daily Fantasy Podcast, where I go and look low on plays and strategies specifically designed for GPPs. This is a show for people who are already informed on daily fantasy sports and how these contests operate. If you have any question later and ask her there's a stupid question, feel free to shoot them away on Twitter, Brandon Cruz DFS. Most importantly, take everything here with a grain of salt and use your best judgment when making entries. Additionally, if you have a gambling addiction, that's just not my problem. Check your sense of feelings at the door. We're talking about the Xfinity Series and Daytona, and very similar to how I'm approaching the Cup Series race, it's the same idea for the Xfinity Series race, to where I'm mainly going to be playing guys from the back, mainly more in a probably 1-5 type of lineup than a 4-2, but those will primarily be my means of building lineups. I'm not going to talk a whole lot because it is, Xfinity at Daytona. Really, the only thing that I still wanted to find out was the whole NBA Motorsports and the Joe Gibbs engine situation, because previously on the last few years, Carl Long has leased motors from Joe Gibbs Racings for the super speedways. There's been some rumors that he's been doing that this year on not just super speedways but some other tracks, but I can't find any solid evidence of it, and I can't sit here for 5 hours looking for that type of stuff. So with me, at least, my gut shot is that MBM is going to be running Toyota Motors, so I'm not worried about them at all. I'm not really worried about any team. Maybe Mike Harmon Racing in terms of their equipment lasting the whole race, but even with that, I'm pretty comfortable with all the cars here, even coming right off the trailer. That's why, especially in this type of race, if you're playing a lot of the sketchier guys in the back, a lot of the guys that you don't normally, have a ton of confidence in playing, you need to be on Twitter. You need to be paying attention. Find one of those streams. I'm not going to give the link out or anything, but find one of those streams that doesn't have commercials. And so when they're on the starting grid, when they're turning their engines over, make sure that your guys are actually rolling off pit road, that nobody's having engine issues, that nobody is having trouble. Check Twitter. See, because most of the time, either Brock Beard or, I don't want to say Jim Under because he's pretty horrible, but some of the other NASCAR guys out there on Twitter, or even some of the beat reporters, will tell you like, hey, so-and-so is stuck on pit road. Hey, they're needing a push off of pit road. And so this is a race where I think you do need to do that, especially if you have a ton of ownership to some of the sketchier plays, probably like I'll do. And so that's really the main thing you have to do this weekend is, so, right before lock is there, make sure that all your guys are actually rolling off pit road. Outside of that, let's go ahead and hop on to the screen. And also, I'm switching the camera settings to see, if I like it better at 60 FPS or not. So that's why I look a bit different here than when I first got the camera, but either way. So really the only thing I did here was everybody's sponsored, but I wanted to at least see a picture of the car. I didn't do it for everybody, but for the people that I was worried about. And so, like, Tim Veens for Mike Harmon Racing, I wanted to see what Joe Graff was running. Same thing with Spencer Boyd. And they actually Jimmy Means actually has a real sponsor this week. Like, I know it's like a high dollar luxury, and maybe not luxury, but it's a high dollar bicycle brand. But, that's a real sponsor compared to Panini or Panene or whatever they were running before, and all their joke, kitty litter sponsors that we saw previous years with Cody taking behind the wall Vanderwall and some of the other guys that he's ran. And so I think Spencer Boyd has a really good car this weekend. I really do. I think they got real money behind that. Obviously, Jason White in the NBA Motorsports car, same thing with Star. He's in the Hattori 61 car. Like I said, I got no proof, but just gut shot me thinking I believe that they're running Joe Gibbs motors this weekend, as we've seen in the past. Obviously, Perkins with Al Motorsports, they're sponsored this weekend. They're not just running a blank, white 23 car. And so, I didn't go around everything. If you look at the entry fee, everybody does have a sponsor, but I wanted to check and see some other teams. The only ones that I couldn't confirm right now, obviously this is like Thursday, early 11 a.m. Some of the MBM, or not MBM guys, some of the BJ McLeod cars like Mason Massey, Matt Mills, couldn't get a decisive picture or anything on what they're running. Obviously, Chase Briscoe is running the Haas car for them. Basically a Stuart Haas prepared ride just under the BJ McLeod Motorsports team name, so he can get ownership points and so that they can get a lock into the races. Other than that, sorry, I'm rambling on too long. We're 4 minutes in. I do want to say that earlier in the year, I didn't end up playing the optimal lineup. I'm pretty sure I was talking to Joe Schroeder. I think he won the first contest this year. Don't remember. I think I was congratulating him or something, and I was talking to him about the winning lineup, and the optimal lineup was the fucking first lineup that I didn't play out of my optimizer. And so the optimal lineup for Daytona earlier this year was Brandon Godvik. I can never pronounce names. Everybody knows that. At least I try to. Anyway, you got Godvik, you got Jason White, A. Allmendinger, Cesar Bassarella, Brett Moffitt, and Steven Parsons. The thing to note about this race is that it was a wreckfest, and the starting positions of these drivers were 39th, 40th, 31st, 38th, 15th, and 36th. Yet again, it lines up to those situations to where when wrecks are wreckfest, the strategy of playing guys from the back works out. If it's not a wreckfest, you need some help. However, the qualifying situation here was interesting because you had A.J. Allmendinger starting 31st. You had Brett Moffitt starting 15th. I mean, 15th isn't all the way back, but Brett Moffitt should have started higher up than that. And then you had a lot of good cars. The Sam Hunt racing car. You had Steven Parsons at 36. And so I truly believe the optimal lineup that ended up happening at Daytona is the reason why we see the salaries at where they are this week. And so normally at plate races, you have slower cars starting in the back or drivers that don't have as much experience in the back, and they're usually cheaper. So this week, obviously, if Chase Briscoe starting 37th, should be a smash play. They have to make it 11.5 because it's Chase Briscoe in a Stewart-Haas racing car. Jason White, optimal this last time, starting 40th. He's starting 35th this time. I know he's in the MBM car, but like I said, I think it's very equivalent to what he ran earlier this year. You have J.J. Yeley starting 34th in a car that I would argue is probably better than the cars that were optimal this last time around when it was a wreckfest. And so, Jason White, J.J. Yeley, Briscoe at 11.5, like I don't mind that at all. You can still stack from the back pretty easily. This is just almost like an example of the tiers and the comparison that I use for the Cup Series. And so in the Cup Series this weekend, you have Kaz Grala and Landon Castle starting in the back. I think that's very equivalent to J.J. Yeley and Chase Briscoe starting in the back this week. However, their pricing is up to represent like, hey, these are plays that you might want to go for. And so this is where you can look at other guys around them and say, I think David Starr has just the same amount of upside as Jason White does or as J.J. Yeley does. Or I would argue that, sure, Briscoe is the smash play here. He should be the best play on the board because he's starting so far back. He should finish up high. It's a plate race. There's a chance that he gets wrecked and he's easily outscored, or Chase Briscoe does well and Spencer Boyd does the exact same as Chase Briscoe because, yet again, in a wreckfest, it nullifies the, I don't want to say experience, but with the possibility of anybody wrecking, it opens the door up for people to, work their way in the optimal lineup or perform the same as, equivalent to, although that's the same thing, or better than other people around them. And so I think we need to consider, everybody back here. And so just like the Cup Series video, like my main pool is going to be these guys. Brandon Brown, however, I don't like Brandon Brown. Going to have ownership to him, but I think we need to be weary about Brandon Brown because in the Xfinity Series, I think we're almost going to see more ownership to J.J. Yeley and Chase Briscoe than we might see out of, Kaz Grala and Landon Castle. I argue that you should go 100% Castle and Grala this weekend in Cup. And I think we're going to see very similar approaches to J.J. Yeley and Chase Briscoe this weekend because they're starting from the back. Pricing doesn't matter. Salaries doesn't matter. Obviously, you can't just smash, all these expensive plays back here, but there's no reason to do that. There's no reason to want to play these four guys together in my mind. And so the salary aspect doesn't bother me. The ownership does. And so if everybody's going to go to Briscoe and everybody's going to go to Yeley, I would argue that I like Jason White in that situation. I know we're going to see that people are going to look back, see that he was optimal at Daytona, see how he performed at Daytona, but I like Jason White in a play to, make it through the whole race. Cesar Bassarelli, I talk about him a lot. I personally like him. Just the poor guy just loves the fast tracks, okay? He loves plate races. He loves tracks where he can go all out. Nobody's going to play him because when you look back at his finishes, and I've played him in every single race. That's just how it is. I almost always play Caesar, and so the 2 times that he's worked has been the 2 Dega races last year and the Daytona Spring Race this year. Outside of that, we have a 36th, 29th, 30th, 29th, 38th, and 38th. Like, those are his bad finishes in both plate races. And so I don't think anybody is really going to play Caesar, especially after what we saw him do at Michigan last week when he kind of just lost it by himself and destroyed the car just because he wanted to get out there. He likes racing, man. And so, he's not a good driver, but for the ownership discount, I'm going to yet again have a lot of Caesar just because I don't think anybody's going to play him. I personally like Spencer Boyd a lot this week. I truly believe that this sponsor is because of Boyd coming over to Jimmy Means. And I know this money doesn't necessarily mean that the equipment is going to be better, but I think this gives Jimmy a reason to say, Boyd, go out there and race the car. We need to get this on TV. These guys are giving us a lot of money. Let's get out there. I like Graf. He's starting, second to last. And how can you not like Tim Veens in this situation? I kind of jinxed it because I mentioned in, I think it was Gateway, that we don't have Tim Veens in the Truck Series anymore. And yet again, and lo and behold, he's back here. But he's with Barnes Law for Mike Harmon. Mike Harmon car starting dead last. Like, there is no reason why Tim should be discounted or thrown out of your player pool. Everybody here is playable. The only guys I'm hesitant on are probably Brown, Yaley, and Briscoe due to their ownership. But I still think they're great plays. And so if you're building a lot of lineups like I am, you're going to have ownership to Brown, Yaley, and Briscoe. Let me change this. Actually, no, I need to keep it that way. I need to keep it as blue. So I think these are guys that should be the highest owned in this area, and you should get different by, personally, I think you should be playing a lot of guys surround him. Actually, let me change that. Everybody from 30th to 40th, I think you should have not two. I think you should probably have 4 to 5, depending on your type of lineup in each one. And then, once you kind of get enough of those lineups that have 4 of these guys in there, then you can start diversifying to where you take 3 from 30th to 40th, and then maybe 2 from 30th to 20th, and then 1 from 19th to 15th, or 19th to 10th. Once you start covering enough bases with enough lineups, because this is one where I personally enjoy entering a lot of lineups on speed weeks, and I want to be able to hit a lot of these guys. And so if you're going back to kind of, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I just kind of hate repeating myself every speedway race. And so I think you should do a lot of 5-1 and 4-2 lineups. And so yet again, I'm just going to throw our imaginary line out as being 20th. And so we're going to count 20th as halfway through the field. It just happens to be halfway through the field, but you can move this line out wherever. And so if you're building, which what I think you should be building, a lot of 5-1s and 4-2 types of lineups, you're going to be taking 4 guys from 21st on back with 2 guys from 20th on forward, or 5-1 would be 5 guys from 20th on back with 1 guy inside the top 20 in your lines. Don't look at track history. Use track history or use results to determine ownership, which is why I think Brandon Brown is going to carry a lot of ownership, because when you see, Brandon Brown at 10-1, maybe the price scares him away. I don't know why pricing even matters this weekend for people, but when you look at Brandon Brown's consistently, just looking at Dega and Daytona, going back all the way to 2015, 2019, at Dega he is 15th, 11th, 10th, and 7th, and then at Daytona, 37th, 36th, 18th, 7th, 7th, 26th, and 6th. I mean, Brandon Brown seems like a very consistent and smart play. I understand. I think Brandon Brown is going to be a pretty consistent play. I think he's consistently going to finish top 10 in more races than he does on plate races. However, I think that's going to bump his ownership up a ton. And so, I would argue, try and diversify. This is a race where, unlike the Cup Series where you have so many different lines you're going against, you don't have to go all in on somebody to get ownership on the field. You can either be under the field or fade him entirely. I think Brandon Brown is a guy that, based on just the guys you could play around him with much less ownership, you should be underweight on Brandon Brown. Outside of that, I like all these guys. And so if we're, still approaching the play from the back and we're seeing that, salaries are a bit higher in the back, well, I still think playing guys from the back still dictates at least 24th being in your main player pool for lineups. And so when you're looking at the salaries for here, it doesn't look that wild. Like Vargas is still starting in the back half of the field. For 5,100, that's perfectly fine. We don't even do much. Just finish the race or get us a few points. Mason Massey shouldn't be owned at all. Easy to get into lineups. Blaine Perkins, a guy that I think is a great pivot off of Brandon Brown. I would much rather be overweight on Blaine Perkins than Brandon Brown. They're in very similar equipment. It's the exact same driver. One is just starting 2 positions higher, but probably for half of the ownership that Brandon Brown is going to get. And so, it just goes back to, like, I'm still playing guys from the back. So once we start moving up, my interest will slightly get lower, but it's probably up until the Snyder boys and the Sam Mayer and Hemrick and Garrett, to where this is where we should start seeing ownership probably pop back up again. And so what do I mean by that? Like, if you're building lineups, I would imagine most people are going to go throw in Briscoe. They're going to throw in Yaley. If they can afford Brown, they'll do it. If they can't do that, well, they're going to play Snyder. They're going to play Mayer. They're going to play Hemrick. They're going to play Garrett because these guys are consistent. I think you should play Garrett a lot. I don't know if the field's going to do that. But these would be the gentlemen that I think are going to gain, or I'm going to throw Castle in there as well. I think Castle will be there too. But the guys in blue are the guys that I think we're going to see a majority of ownership in the back half of the field go to. And yeah, that's really about it. I can't really think of anything else other than the ownership being around the guys in blue right here. And that's kind of just once we get into the top 20, because I do think that we have a chance of wrecking the field even more in this race than we do here. I'm not interested in the top 10 at all. I'm keeping Jade in there just because I think his ownership's going to be really low. But for the most part, my pool is going to be from 10th to 40th because I think these guys have a lot to. These guys have a lot of upside. This is the second to last. Actually, this is the last time we ever see 40 cars in the Xfinity Series on a plate race again, because they don't race Talladega. We're going back to qualifying, and so there's 40 cars in here. And 40 cars that I would argue should be competitive in the race. They should all race. I don't see any of them really having issues. Obviously, some will be slower than others. Some will go laps down. But this is a lot of these guys' last chance to, really gain a lot on a race that's a wreck fest. And so, I expect to see people like David Starr. I wish Timmy Hill was in here because I love playing Timmy Hill on plate races. But I think David Starr, Jason White, Caesar, Boyd, Weatherman, Earnhardt, even Vargas. I think some of these guys are going to be right in the back and have a ton of upside when the field does inevitably wreck, because I do think that both races this week can turn into absolute wreck fests. And so, this is the majority of my pool. I have one-offs pretty much inside the top 20 up until 10th place. After that, I'm not going to be playing guys up here. I'm not interested in laps led at all. Fast laps are going to be spread out between all the drivers, and so I can't project that. And so all I can project is, guys in the back, as I said, guys in the 30s, getting, a bare minimum of like a 26th place finish, a 25th place finish. And so that's how I'm approaching this week. It's stack in the back. Nothing changes for me. I know a lot of people keep saying that, the field is getting, aware to the stack from the back. Well, that just means, play guys that are lower owned in the back. Everybody has upside here. Literally anybody can win a plate race. Literally anybody can wreck at a plate race. And so nothing changes for me. Nothing changes for me at all. I'm just playing guys in the back. And so hopefully this helps you out. I do want to say Castle does make his 500 start in the Cup Series. Narrative streak. Hey, maybe he wins it when somebody else dies. Who knows? I truly believe we injure somebody this week in one of these races. And that's slowly snowballing. We're kind of ranting here. That's slowly snowballing. Have you noticed how many people are getting finally on board of, hey, we might end up losing someone this week? I'm quite proud to have started that. And so hopefully that can really snowball and actually hit, Twitter that actually matters. Maybe some NASCAR YouTubers could start talking about it. Maybe tweet. I'm not going to say that. Last thing is, don't freaking tweet at drivers and teams. Are you sorting parking? What do you like that? I don't know. That's rude to me. That's equivalent to like asking some preseason teams or guys, like, are you playing tonight? Like, what? Dude, don't bother these people. You know, I know we're putting money out, but don't be tweeting at these guys. Be like, what are you doing? What mode are you guys running? Are you starting in parking? What are you doing? Like, I don't know. That's just dumb for me. We're kind of ranting here. If you like the videos that I do, if you like supporting me, or if you want to support me, PayPal is in the description. Patreon is in the description. I appreciate you watching, and best of luck this weekend. Enjoy the race. I'm probably going to be live both days this week, but I'm not sure it's going to really be much of a picks video. It might just be me talking and kind of just chilling with you guys before some of these races. Not sure on the time. Hoping Jordan can join me Saturday. It is a bit later, so we'll figure it out if he still wants to go at noon or other than that. But I think that's about it. Enjoy the weekend, guys. Have fun, and we'll see you next time.